Hey chess lovers, this is Robert Dreamrealist back with another chess video. Tonight I will analyze the last really interesting game between Magnus Carlsen, the ruling world champion in Blitz and in normal standard chess, of course, and Wesley So, the challenger that has risen really quickly and has shown a lot of chess strength and creativity the last 6 months. Um, but yeah, sorry that you see the results, but that's okay. We're gonna analyze the game and see why Magnus Carlsen won the Blitz game. As you know, I'm really interested in Blitz and trying really hard. I just won against the Federal Master, so I'm happy about that. I will make another video about that game quite soon. Um, anyway, let's move on with this game. I will try to be more swift in my analysis and not so verbose, perhaps. We will see. I'm not going to promise anything. Anyway, let's start with the game. Okay. So Wesley started with the knight, yes, and Magnus with a very cautious e6, and yeah, that's fine. Dutch, some kind of a Dutch is going to take place here. I used to play that when I was junior quite a lot, but as you know, now I play the Dream Release Universal Opening, the Butterfly, and there is a channel for that, as you know. And let's move on with the game and see what happens here. Yeah, Wesley fianchettos his bishop, I guess normal in this position. They play these standard grandmaster moves, super grandmaster moves. Even normal players play these kind of moves nowadays. Frankly, it kind of bores me, but compared to the interesting type of games I get through my opening system, this is not what gives me a stimulation. But I'm not going to be too hard on these great players that choose to play solid openings that they know well and that they have analyzed for many years, and that's fine. But as long as they manage to make something interesting of their games, I'm happy too. And let's see if that happens. And here I'm quite fascinated that Magnus placed the bishop to d6, because I mean there is a opportunity to go forward with c5. I'm not sure it's good, probably not, since Magnus played bishop d6, but I think it's a trap. It's like a come, push your pawn and then see what I have in store for you. And Wesley doesn't fall for that. And here we go. Magnus consolidates. It's also very normal when you have a bishop and that fianchetto corner, and then you just make sure nothing bad can happen with your rook. And then we have an interesting idea from Wesley. He wants to exchange the bishop and get the rook line, and that's I guess an interesting concept, but is it sharp enough for Magnus? I don't know. He seems to not care at all. He just castles shortly, and now Wesley consolidates, and yeah, it's kind of a, I don't know, kind of a system here with the pawns, and we'll see what happens, what Wesley has in his back pocket here. He goes out with the queen, a good position for the queen, I guess. Often b3 or b6, or these squares are pretty good for the queen to stay at until something happens. I mean, it's always good to be in line with the king or diagonal with the king. And so Wesley grabs an opportunity to move forward with his knight, and I think it's quite clever, because what he wants is a break of this structure here, this really solid structure. He wants to provocate for a push of a pawn, so he can get some holes, maybe push here and then get the hole here for a rook that comes through here and here, or a doubling. And then also he has another knight that can come and perhaps try to get into one of those holes, or sacrifice at h6. I mean, what happens is you get a little bit more potential for something to happen later on. But strong players very seldom move their pawns, and that is a lesson to learn for any player, actually. So Carlsen moves back his knight, and the idea is probably to shift his focus a little bit here. And now there's a castling, long castling. Carlsen saves up his king. Also very smart to do that early, before something bad happens. He knows there will be a break of these pawns in this center, and then the king has no time to rescue himself. So, and you see, now Wesley takes the opportunity to do that the same. So it's kind of funny when they take this time to do that. Strong players often do that, while weak players, they don't really think that far, or they are not prophylactic enough. So that is an advice for weaker players, and that is something that you should bring home from this game, I think. Okay, queen to e7. Well, you need to place your really strong pieces extremely dynamically, and you see that he also that rook was kind of dead, and that queen was kind of dead. So now the queen has opportunities, the rook has opportunities. So play dynamically, make sure your pieces have life. And at this point, Carlsen does not want the knight there anymore, because now the rook has, in the future, a chance to move the rook over here, and then it's not really nice to have a knight blocking king's escape, right? So another prophylactic move, and I think that's one of the things that I found that really strong players are doing more than other players. Those prophylactic moves, I call them construction moves. I have a concept of construction moves where I think in terms of flexible moves. You can reverse them. You have fixed moves, you cannot reverse them without trouble. And you have cemented moves, you certainly cannot reverse them, and you are stuck with them for the whole game. So that's 3 levels, construction moves. And I'm thinking in a construction kind of concept, like how you build a house, for example, or whatever, and then you use different type of materials to build a house. Like, for example, a window needs to have flexible material, rubber, what's not, and I mean, to make the windows flexible, so you can exchange them if something breaks, etc., etc., and they can open whatever, so you understand probably what I mean. And I think that helped me to increase my rating at least a couple of 100 points, maybe 100, at the same night that I found this concept, that I got this insight. I did not read that from a book. That's one of my own ideas. And that is generally what I do. I try to come up with my own unique chess training ideas. Anyway, let's move on. The knight comes back. So this is so funny, because Carlsen is like a guy who is really flexible in his mind. He doesn't care about what he did in the past, and he always checks what is happening right now. And that is an extremely great gift he has. That's another lesson to bring home from this game. Always don't think about your investment. Think about what you have at the moment to do, what you can do, and what you should do. Okay. opens up a line, and I was actually expecting the other pawn, but it gets very weak here, and the bishop is kind of locked, and but I was thinking in terms of this, but now I see that this pawn is actually completely controlled here, and that would be a bad move. So no, he's absolutely correct, and let's see what happens. Yeah. So you see, here comes an interesting constellation. Knights comes in here, and now Wesley wants to double up his rooks, try to use his line, and also Carlsen uses his strong bishop now. These are pretty dynamic moves at the moment, and Wesley does not want that bishop to strike through like a blade in a cake layer, right? It's like cuts the whole game with that sharp bishop, and he just takes and takes, and now we have a situation where you can chase away that knight, or you can consolidate your whole position in a club formation, which is quite unique. Wesley has probably seen this long time before, even maybe home prepared it. I don't know. It's possible, and but I haven't seen this formation many times. It's kind of quite unique, um, and probably quite solid if you protect this weak spot enough, and we will see if that happens. Okay, so knight takes. He doesn't want to stay there, and that is probably because, oops, sorry about that. That is probably because, sorry, yeah, that is probably because, yeah, that knight gets, this knight gets kind of, I think it's because this knight can move over here and chase pawns, and also I think he doesn't want to have a break of these pawns, because then one of these pawns can push, and then that one has to strike, and then this one will be free. So it's kind of it's an endgame strategy to take here, and that's why he does it. And rook takes back, rook strikes back, and now we have a complete endgame where we have two queens. Who has the strongest queen? Who has the strongest rooks? Who has the strongest kings? Who has the strongest pawn constellations? It looks like Wesley has the strongest pawn constellation, but we will see about that. After that move, suddenly we see a huge weakness in White's position. There is a pawn Black can attack, and he's the first one to attack a pawn. That's an interesting. I mean, that's an important point. Black has seen that he is the one to first attack a pawn, and that was the weakest pawn, and that's key to understand these mechanisms really early in the mid game, just so you can make sure you don't end up in something like that. Okay, Wesley has some answers to that. He threatens his own pawn, yeah, and now we have the second layer of the endgame. Like, who can really threaten the other king the quickest, or more pawns? And as we see here, with that rook going to this dynamic line, cutting off the king, and also indirectly cutting off the rook, because the rook can't place itself there, because then you check, and then you have an open king, which is extremely dangerous. And you can like check your way and really grab pawns. You see, this king is very safe. Once you come to an endgame, this king is safe, and nothing you can do about it. And then this queen can just have rock and roll on the table, on the board. Okay. Anyway, Wesley see that this is one of his only chances to give some kind of resistance, and Carlsen takes that pawn, and now suddenly we get an extremely weak spot here. The rook can double, and the queen can come here to c2, and stuff can happen, and also this pawn is hanging very soon. And at the same time, there is nothing much big to worry about. So Carlsen has long time before made sure his king is safe, like 10 moves ahead. Like he knows, like whatever black does, it'll take at least 5, 6, 7, 8 moves before the king gets in some kind of a shaky position. And so I think that's one of Carlsen's tricks, that he knows very well how to put his king and make sure that his king is never the one that is the weakest. And we also discussed in the last game I analyzed, game 2, chess video 2, about always be the heavier attacker, the heavier concept, the heavier damage. That way the opponent needs to fall back. It's a chicken race, right? And the one who has much is the most nervous will back up or back off, and that is another lesson to take home from this chess game. Don't be the chicken. Okay, so here we have a2 to a3. Well, he needs a little space, of course, and that's wise, but at the same time, I mean, look at it, it's not really very constructive. I mean, you would like to do something to attack the king, right? But you can't, you have to defend yourself. So already black is really in a good position, and now we see what's happening. The rook is in a bad position too, and by step, the black queen is moving towards the weak spots here, and this queen is doing nothing right at the moment. And then we have this move, and now suddenly you see you can't even back up your queen. So you see it was very, very greedy to take that pawn. That queen should have stayed as a defender for sure. But Wesley, I mean, I'm pretty sure he saw at least a few of these things, even if he's not a superhuman who can see everything here. But I mean, it was quite obvious that there was nothing for white to do. He should probably have stayed as a defender. That's my judgment about this game. And who knows, maybe I'm right, and I think it's kind of a sound thing to stay as the defender when black or the opponent is stronger than you in position. But of course, sometimes you have to attack, but look at it, it's not even an attack. So, and now, okay, he has this little idea, but even if the rook exchange on h6 sacrifice itself, there's not much to do. As long as the rook is on that file, nothing can happen, right? And then you have that weakness, that huge weakness. So takes, and everything is falling apart like a gingerbread house. Okay, and who is the mean witch, and who is Hans and Gretel? And I think I know the answer to that. Someone took a cookie over here, and that, I think you know who that was, and you get punished from that by the evil witch Magnus Carlsen. So anyway, the queen takes the next pawn, but let's see if that's a crooked crumble for Magnus, but I don't think so. Look at this, nothing can happen. Magnus had already calculated all these variations long time before. Like, what can happen in this situation? Nothing. So that's why he dared to play like this. That's why he had these moves, and he wanted this endgame. So this is one of Wesley's weakness, I think, especially in Blitz. I mean, In Classic, he probably would have seen it. But I think Wesley is not as strong as Magnus for sure in Blitz. Magnus is much, much far ahead in Blitz for now. Maybe not later. We'll see. But if Wesley So wants the title, he needs to up his Blitz game by many, many, many. I mean, he needs to be faster, he needs to be a deeper thinker, a more tactical thinker, and more strategical thinker. Even if he's one of the absolute best in the world, he's still not in the league of Magnus, that's for sure. Okay, so he tries at least a few things here. He tries to chase away the rook. So the rook goes for a wild goose chase here, and then it could be dangerous. But Magnus has these other moves just to make sure that nothing can happen. And okay, and now here we see Magnus' next idea. Move a pawn. Make sure you have the heavier ammunition, and that pawn is heavy ammunition, and everything is protected, right? But we have a new threat from Wesley, but then we have also defense from Magnus. So what can we expect from this? Not much. There is still nothing to attack, and we have a threat here. So, but it's very, very hard to get that pawn into queening or becoming promoted. How do you do that and still maintain a protection of this? That is one of Magnus' brilliance things, that he has the capacity to find those moves in blitz time levels. I don't know how much time they had exactly here, and I think the chess world should check that make sure that the clocks always get updated so you can see what kind of time is left when that move was made. It's an extremely simple computer science structure to build into any interface. I know, because I'm a computer science major, and I know how simple that thing is, and I see it everywhere. The times are never synchronized with the chessboard after when you do an analysis, and that is like ridiculous. Why not? It's such a simple maneuver, and doesn't take much memory either, and processing speed. So chess world, please fix that, because in this tech world it's ridiculous to not be updated with also another dimension of the chessboard. Anyway, let's move on. There was some criticism about today's chess interfaces, and I've seen it everywhere, and that's a huge improvement for the chess world to do. And you get that tip from me for free. Okay, let's move on. D3. So yeah, Magnus has a little interesting concept here. He knows that if the rook, as you see here, this, yeah, so black is really ahead here, but the idea here behind that move is that what if you exchange here, then yeah, then he takes that pawn, and then everything falls apart, because once that pawn is lost, then this pawn can start to move. Yeah, anyway, that's, there we have it, and then queen comes to the next pawn to protect and also be an aggressor. But at this point Magnus has a check there, which is very nasty. The reason for that is that he wants to make a change, and this very lateral move here he found, that he moves from there to here to that in a perfect triangle. That's very very creative to see that, and in time that you can see Magnus' brilliance here. That's a very nice move. Anyway, Now king is back in a really vulnerable place, and now Magnus moves his f4 pawn. Actually, not g pawn, f pawn. So at the chance when he had a chance to push a pawn, he decided to do this lateral move, this triangle formation, and move this pawn instead. That is another lesson to bring home from this. Don't always just look at the obvious. Try to find the not so obvious and not so direct moves that can give you that little extra edge, even if it's just in a blitz game. And I mean, that's absolutely brilliant. Anyway, Wesley has his own little tricks, but you see here, Magnus has it all figured out now. By now, you see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 pawns, 1, 2, 3. So right now, it's just a matter of time. And sure, Wesley has 2 free pawns, but look at the distance it has to travel, and look at the distance of this pawn. But of course, I would be super nervous in my position like this. I mean, if you didn't really figure out exactly what's going to happen here, and of course Magnus has it figured out, because he knows there is no chance these pawns with this weak king is going anywhere when these pawns are so quick. And the reason is, once you stand behind that pawn, it is like a racing, it's like a sprinter, and it is supported by anabola steroids. I don't know, it is like a hyper fast Usain Bolt at the moment. And the queen comes to b4. What it's going to do, it's going to try to threaten black's position. But here we have another genius move. Let the king be active in the endgame. Do what it can do, and make sure it's safe. I mean, look at this safety here. Everything is built like a fort. Magnus is an amazing construction player, as I told about before. This is what Wesley was not. Look at his king. He has been out in the wild for many moves, and Magnus has taken advantage of it every time. So that's a lesson for Wesley So, and for all other players except for Magnus. So rook tried to block. Sure, it's possible, but now we have another pawn that can be entering the game here. And now queen is protecting that rook, so king can move back into safety again. Everything is so organized and so orderly, and I love to see these organizational tricks of Magnus. That's what I bring home from this game. And queen, okay, tries to block, but then Magnus just moves away his king. And what he does here is that he moved to the diagonal instead of moving to the corner, which is tempting because it's not in any kind of immediate threat, or not even indirectly. But he decides to move to the diagonal, and we might see why very soon. But I see that the game is actually there is nothing more in the game. It's dead. I mean, Wesley gave up here. There is nothing for him anymore. Yeah, since that king. Then the pawns just push. And white rook is extremely weak. It will just look silly if Wesley started to move his pawns here. Look at these pawns. They're going to eat Wesley alive. It will be so embarrassing to just watch. So anyway, I hope Wesley does better in the standard games. That's where his strength is right now, and he's fort. And I think he knows that he needs to be in a super blitz camp after this tournament. He is not by far in Magnus League in Blitz. Um, so anyway, thanks for watching. I hope you found it interesting. Yes, I was a little chatty today, but I hope I was interesting enough to listen to. Uh, and this was the third video. Make sure you check out and comment maybe on the first and second video and also this one, and let me know what you like about it, what you don't like about it, what you want to hear next, etc., etc. And please share if you like them. I think you learn something from it, because I do, and that's why I make these videos, because I also learn from them myself. And I will keep following this tournament and maybe even analyze some standard games that I find really interesting. This was a Blitz game, which is really my thing, and I think you know that Blitz is a completely different animal than standard chess, but at the same time, these players play at such a high level, so you learn anyway, even if it's just a Blitz game, even for your standard chess. Okay, enough of that, and thank you for listening and watching. Hope to see you soon, and don't forget to subscribe. There will be much more videos coming up, and I'll try to find new formats, and I will keep the formats that you liked and enjoyed, and that I enjoyed to make, and then I'll try to develop this channel. This one will be posted in chess in a new light, I think, and we will see about the third channel, but I haven't really decided yet. But please give me some ideas what you would like to see and watch in the third channel. Anyway, thank you and good night.